You know, it's funny talking about that. Of all the games that I've been playing like all sorts of random games lately. I booted up out of nowhere Valkyria Chronicles 4 the other day because I was like, you know what? I got this cartridge. I always sit there and like every now and then they'll put Valkyria Chronicles, like the original, which I had on PS3, but they'll put like the original version on sale on Switch for $5. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll download that and start from the original. You know, from square one. I played a little bit of it on PS3, but I was like, you know what? I don't give a fuck about this story. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm just going to start from where just the game I have. Hey everybody, welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with John Hines.
Hey there.
And Randall Nolery.
Hey folks.
And we are back as always to talk about some video games. We got the full trio in the house once again. I feel like we've been doing a bunch of duo episodes here and there to kind of get I keep saying the new year. It's already almost March here at the time of recording this here. So, but yeah, in 2025, I feel like we've been doing a nice little smattering of a few different lineups for the podcast here. But yeah, we got everyone in the house once again, and we've all been doing, I was going to say a bunch of gaming. We've all been doing, mixed amounts of gaming over the last few weeks or so.
I don't know that I've been doing a bunch of gaming, but I wish.
Exactly. I've been doing a mixed bag, like a bunch on some days, and then some days I'm not touching it at all. It just kind of depends. But
yeah.
John, I know you've been doing a little bit of gaming as well, so why don't we let you take the lead here with a few of the games that you've been playing.
Sure. So I touched on it briefly, I think, on the last episode, how I had finished the base game of Outer Wilds and have the same exact opinion as like the entire time of this is just a masterpiece of a game and everyone should play it. And I want to talk about it as either abstractly, obliquely, or like little as possible, because so much of the game is just like figuring it out. And like I made a real point to not look anything up. The only thing I looked up throughout the entire course of the gameplay is like after I had done something as a solution to a puzzle, and I like was not 100% sure that what I had done caused the solution. So I was like, is this really what I did to make this work? And it turned out that it was true, but like it still was like just a thing where I was like, I don't want to set up all the dominoes again to like test this to confirm. I would rather just look it up and be like, yes, what I did actually worked, and that was the solution to the specific puzzle. But it is such a beautifully crafted game, and like puzzles that like I couldn't even conceive of, and I'm just so impressed that someone thought them up at any level. And like that was the base game, and since completing the base game I have started the DLC Echoes of the Eye, which like is its own thing. And I'm struggling to figure out how many specifics I can get into, how much I can disclose about it, because it's a similar thing. Like, I really think the point of the game is playing it and figuring out all these mysteries and like not getting spoiled on them. But I think a core thing of both the original game and of the DLC is that there is the only barrier to solving any problem or any puzzle that you come across is just learning about the game itself. Like you don't gain any new abilities, you don't unlock things that like are gating you off. Like
that's so brilliant.
It's honestly the most impressive game design and level design or world design, however you want to put it. Like it's just so immaculately crafted at every level. Like a thing, like if you really want zero spoilers, like I would say skip ahead, but a thing that like I really think is impressive about the game is how it like introduces concepts like shortcuts, where it's like not necessarily like, oh, you've unlocked this path, or it's just like kind of navigating around the map and like getting a familiarity with like the places that you're going to, the locations in the game, and you're just like, oh, well, there is like an entrance here that you wouldn't know unless you've already gone through the long way around, and then you see this exit that like once you know where the exit is, you can just take that back door every single time going forward. So it kind of like introduces these things like how like a Death's Door or a Dark Souls.
That's exactly what I was just thinking.
Like kicking down a ladder, like a hard unlocking of a shortcut in those games. This one is, again, it's just knowledge. It's just knowing that there is a back entrance to this place that you can, a thing that would take you an entire loop. Now it's just like, okay, well, I'll just go there directly. And then that's like the shortcut that you learn. And it's like, the thing that I really love about most games that I play is just like learning a geography, learning like the actual physical locations of everything in a like space, and like really getting a familiarity with it. And this game rewards that like time and time again in a way that just
like the name of the game pretty much.
Oh yeah, that's John stuff for sure.
It is so much of just like a specific John game.
Oh
like,
yeah,
top to bottom.
Well, the thing honestly that I'm so impressed with though is especially with like how much you were praising the original, main game all the way through it. The fact that it stuck the landing, because I can't tell you how many times I'm like playing a game and loving it, and then you get to the end and it either drags out too long, or the ending's just kind of cheesy, or whatever it might be. It's just like, oh, that kind of left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth on an otherwise fun experience, or you know what I mean. I'm sure we've all had that experience before. So the fact that not only they stuck the landing, and then they're also just being able to like continue that or carry that torch into the DLC and just like give you more of that, not same experience, but similar experience, I guess.
And I think that
is
like,
awesome.
That's part of like the consistency and the level design, the world design of it all, like having to do basically the comparison I use a lot is Majora's Mask, where, when you're doing a perfect day in Majora's Mask, you have to do so much. Like, it's like, okay, well, day one, you have to do this to set up everything to cascade so that by the end of day 3, you're accomplishing everything, or you've beaten every single boss in every one of the dungeons, and you've done everything. Whereas, like, this is really just is like, okay, you can do anything from day 1, or minute 1, or however you want to start it. But like, I don't know. It's a different goal. Like the idea that like you can play this game, boot up a new save, and like beat it with the knowledge of just having played it prior, and like do it completely. Like that's not the point of it. In the same way of like, yes, you could watch a Let's Play of it, or you could read a synopsis of it and like see is like, oh, well, like that's just what the game is. Like that you can absolutely read like, here's what the game does, here is what the ending of the game shows, and like that's not the point of the game. The point of the game is figuring out it as you go. And like that's also with Echoes of the Eye, the DLC is like, I am so impressed with how it keeps coming up with new things and like new systems to surprise me and ways of interacting with the world without introducing anything new.
Jeez.
Like that's I was so amazed. I was like, I didn't think there was any juice left to squeeze in this game. And like, you created an entire basically second game out of this, and it's unbelievable. Like I cannot recommend both this game and the DLC enough. And like I would maybe say like halfway through the DLC at this point. I have no idea. Okay. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to check because
no, don't.
Yeah.
Like every time that I find out something new, and like it also I think helps having a friend who played through it, and Mikey, our good friend, who like constantly was needling at me. He's like, "This is one of my favorite games. Please finish this. Like, I need someone to talk about this game with, because it's such a singular experience that like no other game is." And like, the more I'm always hesitant to talk about it, other than just giving universal praise for it, because I'm so desperate to talk about this game.
Yeah, I don't even want you to compare it to something else, because I don't want to have like partial spoilers from that even, like, damn.
I mean, the comparison that I keep coming back to, and it's a game that I've never played, but it's a game that I've watched Let's Plays of, which is also the wrong thing to do, I think, but whatever. I understand how people interact with media. Like, I know that people are going to just watch Let's Plays of like Outer Wilds and stuff, but like, I watched Let's Plays of Myst and Riven.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
And
yeah.
The like similar feeling, especially in the DLC Echoes of the Eye, like it feels so much like a Myst or a Riven, where instead of it being a like static puzzle screen that you're like kind of interacting with and doing it, it's like real-time physics puzzles.
Oh man.
Which is unbelievable. Like,
yeah,
things keep happening in the DLC that like as they're occurring, I'm like, someone had to plan this. Like, that is inconceivable that someone came up with this as like a puzzle. Like, I'm constantly impressed with it, and it's unbelievable as a game.
Wow. Without like, it sounds like without any like real brand new gameplay elements, just kind of new ideas on the riffing on the same things that were already there. Right?
Yeah, it does like. I don't want to say what's different about but like the DLC is fundamentally different from the base game, while still being physics-based puzzles.
Yeah.
And like a physics-based like closed system. But it is a different, if you think about the like main application of forces in physics, like it is dealing with a fundamental different force, or multiple different. Oh my! It's so good. Please play this game. I want to talk about it with someone so badly.
The only thing that scares me off a little is just how much you use the word physics while you talk about it, because I don't really tend to like physics in video games, like, or quote unquote realistic physics.
And I don't know if that's not your like what you enjoy in a game. I don't think there's any amount of convincing that will like change it, because like it is just that at the end of the game. Because
to me, I've heard of multiple people talk about this game, and you're the first person who's like really leaned into calling it like physics puzzles. Like, to me, people have always like described it more as like just like solving puzzles just in general, and like how everything's stitched together and whatnot. So that was the appeal to me originally. But and the fact that it's from Annapurna Publishing, you know what I mean? Like, good track record from them publishing cool games. But then the other part of my brain is like, okay, maybe this game is like Return of the Obra Dinn, like too big brain for me, number one. And then number two, possibly like the physics with you bringing that up a bunch. I'm like, I don't really like physics. And like, I basically just don't like a game to have realistic weightiness. I don't like that feeling typically. But obviously this is in outer space, so I'll never know what that feels like.
And like, you just have to like engage with it on its own terms. Like, there is no way around that. Like, I think I use the comparison of like Baba Is You, even though they're completely different games, but like they are kind of like approaching, like you're given a scene or a setting that's like put in front of you, and you just kind of have to figure out what the hell is going on, or how you can interact with the individual pieces.
Yes.
And like,
and not make too many assumptions too early. If Baba Is You is a similar, or
once you figure out how one thing interacts with another thing, then suddenly exploding that out and putting this like, oh wait, if that's been true this entire time, how does that impact literally everything else that I've ever interacted with? And like kind of like completely dismantling assumptions you have on how the game works, or like how how reality works in this game. Like, I love that. But like Baba Is You, I think is fundamentally a harder game because like the abstractions are more like abstract and like complex. Like whereas like it's more of a like I think the physics basis of like all the puzzles kind of grounds it in a more easily or readily understandable way, where it's like, okay, I'm actually like interacting with these like objects. Like there's
Baba Is You, you're like turning on your programming brain a little bit,
big
like
time.
thinking like in that frame of mind instead of just like you said, like kind of just I'm interacting with this actual object that moves sort of like I would expect it to or whatever.
And I move in the way that I expect until I don't. And then suddenly I have to like reapply that assumption into other ways. But God, I can't stop thinking about this game. I can't stop like wanting to be back in it. And like even though like I've beaten it, there's still like things that are unexplained that I'm sure like the game has answers for, because it has answers for everything. But all my little journal entries for the base game are all completed, so it's more of just me figuring out what the hell's actually happening. But
that's great.
That's awesome.
I love it.
I definitely, even though I'm like on the fence in some regards, it's one of those games that just there's enough buzz and hype around it that I at least want to like see what it's all about at some point.
I will buy it the next time it goes on sale on Xbox. I'm committing to that.
Nice. But I also do want to give the caveat, it took me a while and a ton of just running my head against the wall of like, I don't understand what's happening. I'm not making any progress. I'm just going to fail for a lot and hopefully move forward. So I definitely did need someone externally giving me like encouragement, not necessarily giving me hints.
We've got you.
But,
Exactly.
Like I'm still texting Mikey nonstop being like, okay, so this happens when I do this. And this is probably happening when I do this. I don't understand why this is happening at all. and just Mikey like responding with like a smiley face, being like, huh, that sounds interesting.
Just wait for it. That's awesome.
Ugh. I was going to talk about Metroid Prime, but I talked so much about
I was just going to say, do you want to dip into any of that?
I think I'm good. I've been playing Metroid Prime 1 and 2. I beat 1 remastered on casual. I got a sub 7-hour run. It's embarrassing. But,
that's awesome. It's a big game.
It is a big game. I had to go back to the impact crater to get the location of all the Chozo artifacts in my logbook to double check. It's fine.
Yeah, you had a 70-some% completion rate there too. I noticed.
That's just
not bad.
That's the base game, and I did a few of the upgrades. I got all the beam combos, but we'll talk. I'll be playing. My plan is to play through the entire Metroid Prime series again. So I'm into
up to 4,
and I've got thoughts about how you path a Metroidvania, and you have like a final thing, but I'll save that for another one.
I like it.
Nice. Well, I'm hoping that'll give me a little encouragement because I haven't touched it since you and I talked about Metroid Prime Remastered last, John. But I'm still planning on picking it back up again. I just haven't quite been in the right frame of mind to like, I'm in the mood to like dip into that world again.
You got to get multiple beams and multiple visors. That's the whole point of the
game. I know. I think I just got stuck. It's not even stuck, but just like didn't know exactly where to go next and just like, okay. yeah, I guess I'll just leave it there for now. And I guess, yeah, just to veer off into another game that I'm kind of doing the same thing with. I've been playing a bunch, actually legitimately a bunch of the Legend of Zelda Minish Cap. I'm about 6.5 hours in. I'm playing this on the Nintendo Switch Online, Game Boy Advance service, which again, shout out to Randall for letting me milk off that family pass or expansion pass plan or whatever it is.
I'm a sicko that's going to pay for it anyway. You get like 5-6 slots or whatever.
Yeah, that was the logic that you beat me down with. It was just like, well, it's just like they're there and I'm not using them, so just jump on here. So
somebody's playing those. I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah, and nonetheless, awesome. I'd probably have it regardless. But I'm happy to play these N64 games, Game Boy Advance games. I don't fire them up too often, but I saw on Valentine's Day they actually added Wario Land 4, and it got me noticing like, oh, you know what? I haven't booted up that Game Boy Advance in a while. And then I saw Minish Cap on there, and I was like, you know what? I own this game in a physical box, which I told John the other day. I ordered this on eBay back in the day, and like it said, mint condition, and the guy sent it to me in like just an envelope, came in a smashed box. I'm like, dude, you said mint condition, and he's like, well, yeah, you didn't tell me you were a collector. I would have flat packed it, and I'm like, well, you said mint condition. I assumed you were gonna send it in a box. But nonetheless, so I've got a nice,
he sold it to you in mint condition, and then
exactly,
you sent it through the mail the way you wanted to.
Got totally smooshed in the mail. It's not the worst box I've ever seen, but it's definitely, it's seen better days. And when you're buying those boxes are nice when they're in good condition.
I know the cardboard boxes though is the bane of the retro existence.
It really is. Yeah. It really is. Genesis had it right, or Sega, with the plastic ones, at least in the end. Yeah, exactly. In the early days.
Yeah.
But yeah, nonetheless, I'm about 6.5 hours into Minish Cap here, and I would say I've probably spent at least an hour and a half to maybe 2 wandering around.
Yeah.
Getting lost like I always do in any Metroidvania or Zelda game. But I've been going with a similar approach, like you were saying with Outer Wilds, John. I've been trying to like really not look anything up to a point. I did get to. I'm trying to think of what the first thing that I looked up was. And it's actually one of the things that's really nice about this game. So if you actually like stop, and you can just pause the game and save at any point. And I think it like, if you pick, I've been using like the suspend states and whatever. So I don't know exactly how it works when you save and boot back up. But that said, or if it like boots you up in the same exact spot where you were, or if it's just in the same room, I can't remember. But that said, you have your little hat character that you wear. I think the name is Ezlo or Elzo.
Ezio.
Ezio? I thought it was
it might be
Ezlo. But whatever it is, basically looks like your normal hat, but it has like kind of like a bird beak on it. It's a really cool kind of character design. And the core conceit of this game is like it allows you to like shrink down to miniature size, kind of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids style, like we were talking about earlier. And then, explore certain parts of the map in that vein. And I kind of forgot the point I was going to make when I was first bringing up Ezlo there. Oh yeah, when you save the game and then you boot it up again for the next time you dive back in, like Ezlo will right away be like, "Hey, did you already forget what we were doing? We were trying to go to the Wind Temple," and like gives you a little like let me pick up exactly where I left off. But for whatever reason, I either hadn't done that yet or hadn't whatever hint it gave me like wasn't clear enough, and there was like I couldn't remember what I was doing last time, so I just looked up like a walkthrough and I was like, okay, where am I supposed to go next? And as soon as I saw like the words that were like, okay, that's where I'm supposed to go, I like stopped looking at it and like okay, I just want to make sure I'm heading in the right direction, so I'm not I already wasted an hour trying to figure out where to go next. But that said, like now that I've gotten a little further in, like I'm in the 3rd dungeon now, I think. The Wind Fortress, I think is what it's called. And I've been like exploring that, and like best I could tell, I was like, okay, I feel like I've explored every single room in this dungeon. And there's like kind of a mechanic in this where like you're going up multiple floors and then you can kind of fall down the middle. Like at some point a key will drop down like this hole, and then you're like, oh, if I walk off the ledge, I'll fall down to where that key fell down to, and I can, go down to the bottom basement of the dungeon and pick it up or whatever. But I'm like comb this dungeon. I'm like, what the heck? There's clearly I'm going to get some digging mechanic. I can see all this dirt around everywhere that I'm going to clearly be able to, get out of my way. But I can't find. I'm clearly going to be able to get, an item in this dungeon. I can't find it anywhere. So I did look it up. I'm like, what the heck am I missing? And like, oh, I'm just supposed to bomb this invisible wall that has these 2 skulls on the sides of it that like, oh, it's like bomb this suspicious looking wall. Exactly. And it's like every other bomb. I shouldn't say every other, because I've come across a few of these now where they're like, I guess they're like, yeah, they are technically telegraphed with like 2 pots on the side of them or something like that. But it's like there's tons of spots where there's
How
2
could you make it more obvious?
Well, especially for it to be, it's one thing if they put like a little secret where it's just like, oh, a heart piece of a heart container back there. But when it's like, this is the main item to make progress in this dungeon, like this is kind of some bullshit. So I was a little bit annoyed about that. And like, even like just little things in the game too, like at one point earlier in the game, it's like, I'm going into this swamp and it's like, make sure you get your Pegasus boots before you head over to this area. And I'm like, okay, I better scour this area for the Pegasus boots before I go over to the swamp. So I'm like looking everywhere. I'm going everywhere I can go. I'm shrinking down. I'm growing. I'm like traveling everywhere on this map. And it's really cool, actually. You can pause the game. You got like a kind of zoomed out mini map. And then you can click on like any of the... They're not evenly divided up, but you can like click on any of the quadrants and then it gives you like a more zoomed in version of the map. And then obviously you have your dungeon maps and your, compasses and stuff like that as well. But, I'm scouring around looking for these Pegasus boots. And then again, I can't find them. I'm like, I've looked everywhere in this area. There's nowhere else I can look. And then I look up, it's like, oh, now that you've gone to this area, you've triggered something in Hyrule Town, so now you can go to the shoe store that was closed before and just buy the Pegasus shoes. No. But then you go there to buy them, and nope, the cobbler fell asleep, and now you got to go all the way to the witch's dungeon, and you got to buy it. And so I go to the witch's dungeon, I buy the fucking potion, and then I go back, I'm going to wake him up with the potion. And then I get back there, and no, I needed to pick up this weird mushroom. There was a mushroom just sitting on the floor in the corner in the witch's house, and apparently I was supposed to pick this up, walk it over to the witch, and then they're just like, hey, do you want to buy it for 40 rupees? And it's a magical wake-up mushroom. And I'm like, what the fuck is this game? It's so random. There's like so many like BS like little puzzles in it that are like so like scripted, for lack of a better word. You have to do it in the right order. And that I get every Zelda game's like that.
It's a retro game for sure that way, huh?
Yeah, it's definitely has like little moments like that. So I'm glad I've like opened up the floodgate a little bit to like look at a guide here and there just to keep the momentum moving. Like I'm really not, as soon as I see like the little hint I need that I'm like, oh, that's where I'm supposed to be going. Okay, I'm done. I'm not reading anymore. I'm not going to make sure how to do it. Like, it's not like I looked up, oh, I had to bomb that wall and get the mitts. And then I keep reading. Oh, now where do I go after that? It's just like, okay, now I know where the mitts are. Now I know I have this whole other chunk of the temple that I haven't explored yet that I can poke around in and, at least, try to get through that before I, reference the guide again. But nonetheless, I know I've been kind of like griping a little bit here, but I'm really having fun with this game. I'm loving the music. The pixel art is really awesome. It's one of the, I would say one of the better looking 2D Zelda games, if not the best, as far as like pixel art 2D Zelda games go. There's just a little more detail to the animation. Like there's like, I don't know, just little more frames than there are typically in like a Zelda game,
Yeah, for traditional 2D sprite art, would that have been like the most powerful, console release for
platform?
Like actual 2D
for like
Zelda?
An actual new one that they made?
Yeah.
I would say probably.
It had more design, I think, than like Four Swords Adventure or Four Swords, whichever what the GBA title was.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That was,
and it was before Phantom Hourglass, which was like the 3D version of it. So yeah, it was probably the like most like involved pixel art version one of the like, because it was the only one, I think. Other than Four Swords, which was almost more of like, not generic, but
I guess like the Four Swords on the GameCube. They had the GameCube version of it that came out too. But but nonetheless, it's just a gorgeous looking game, and it's cool. I think the handheld Zelda games, the top down 2D ones, for me at least, they're like the perfect scope, and they're probably not even all that different from the original ones. In theory,
original
I just haven't really. I just haven't really played any. I've never actually like beaten a top-down 2D Zelda game ever.
Have you played Spirit Tracks?
Never, actually.
Me neither, actually.
I don't. That's actually one of the few games I don't even know if I've ever unwrapped.
I really
might be the same.
I really liked Spirit Tracks. I never played Phantom Hourglass, so
I played a little bit of that one, and it's cool. I didn't love the touchscreen controls, but I could bear with it,
Yeah.
And I totally respect them trying to just do something a little different and fresh. But I'm definitely like, it's fun to, go back, and it's cool. You got a roll mechanic in this game, so I don't know if you always get that in Zelda, so you can like really kind of like rip I find myself like pretty much constantly, just as soon as I'm standing upright, just tap it again and just keep rolling.
That's a 3D Zelda mechanic.
Yeah.
But also, when you have it in 3D Zelda, you're rolling the entire time.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Ocarina of Time, for sure.
Yes.
Rolling for days.
Yeah. I actually just saw, I can't remember if it was on a video or a podcast that I was watching this or heard this mentioned or who said it. So I feel bad that I can't remember where I heard it. But they were talking about how like the whole reason that they didn't give you a jump button in Ocarina of Time was just because they were like, it's just going to make like that game feel like a goofy joke, if you can just jump around and just act like an idiot all the time. So like they just like force you to like, okay, we're only going to like let you jump when you need to. But I remember as a kid just, man, this is so weird. You just automatically jump when you run off an edge. Like
you jump when you lock onto an enemy and you're in your fighting stance. And
and it was a better attack.
It was a really cool gameplay mechanic.
It's great.
Yeah. But
it kind of worked.
But yeah, back to Minish Cap though. It's I don't really have a ton to say about it. I mean, it's basically just top-down 2D Zelda, but I mean, it's made by Capcom, who if I'm not mistaken, I said this on the Save It for the Cast. I don't know if I was right about it when I said it, but I think they made the Oracle games too, right? The Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, which I've only dabbled in, also thanks to the Switch Online, Game Boy Color games and stuff. But actually, that was actually what triggered me playing this, because I booted up a little bit of whichever one that I fired up for maybe 30 minutes. And I was like, this is pretty cool, but like, I kind of want to play the Game Boy Advance one, that might have a little more meat on the bones. And because I had that like weird experience of like,
those games have so much meat on those bones, like Oracle.
The Oracle games, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've beaten Oracle of Seasons, never beat Oracle of Ages, but they're incredible. Like in the same way that like Link's Awakening. Yeah. Like that era of top-down Zelda are just so good.
I would say almost those games in particular, and Link's Awakening being the one from Nintendo out of the bunch, but like they have like a little bit of a different energy to them. Like they're like a little bit more offbeat or like a little bit goofier, but like not in like a silly way, but like they're just like, they just like, I don't know, they like let loose a little bit more. Where like they're a little more rigid with Zelda, especially in the early days, Link to the Past and the original, even though I love those games too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like thinking like overall, like I feel like Zelda has always been kind of a goofy game. Like thinking about Wind Waker and like Toon Link, like just how he reacts to everything. And then also like I feel like Skyward Sword like had a lot of goofy moments in it. Like
I guess I was thinking more of like the stuff how they'll have in like Link's Awakening, how they'll be like chain chomps and like Mario, like the little bit more like stuff that you just wouldn't see. It's like, this is not serious enough for a Zelda game.
Yeah, like Link's Awakening.
But I totally know what you mean.
Thing. Yeah.
No, but I totally see what you're saying too. Yeah, they definitely kind of, or even just the way Link never talks. It's like almost has like a humorous element to it at times.
Oh yeah.
Yes, a stoic, unresponsive Link is the punchline to like half of the jokes in Legend of Zelda.
Seriously. But yeah, it's one that I would just say, like, if you've never played it, and especially if you have the Switch Online expansion pass and you're a fan of top-down 2D Zelda games, especially if you like the puzzly side of things and you don't mind a little retro tedium, and or you're not opposed to just looking up a little thing here and there online to keep the momentum moving. Yeah, I'm glad that I'm playing this game, and I guess I'm glad I just have that as an option, and also just have the convenience of save states. And even though it seems like the regular saving, this game works pretty well. You can just pause and save anytime you want. But,
ooh, nice.
Yeah, cool retro Zelda game that I'm a pretty big fan of.
Nice.
But yeah, why don't we toss it over to Randall to keep it in the retro realm to wrap things up tonight?
It's too bad I wasn't talking about more Newtopia. That probably would have been a much better transition. Like, I should play more of those Zelda type games. Like, oh, you're actually playing another one of those Zelda type games, so maybe finish that first.
Maybe
but I'm not going to talk.
Going,
no, we're going to talk about Military Madness. It's another TurboGrafx 16 game that came out 1990 in United States, 1989 in Japan. close to launch of the TurboGrafx 16. Of course, I'm playing it on the Analog Pocket. Actually, when I saw that they were going to do the TurboGrafx 16 / PC Engine like adapter for the Analog Pocket, this is one of the first games that came to mind because, you know, I've always like had a side eye to strategy games. I played enough Advance Wars in my day, and you know, things of these natures. But I also knew enough to know like Advance Wars, you know, being on Game Boy Advance. Although, you know, if we're gonna talk about the history of the Wars series that started out on Famicom of all places, and actually came out before Military Madness / Nectaris, which was what it was called in Japan. Came out before that by a year. Originally, it's that series, the Wars series or Advance Wars as we know it in America, has a very long lineage too. Although Nintendo, besides this Switch port that finally got released, has more or less forgotten about it.
Yeah, for real.
Anyway. But I just knew, like, you know, strategy games aren't necessarily lookers to say that. Like, that's not, like, the main reason you're going to play these. Like, the advantage you'd get by playing it on a big screen TV is not quite the same for this genre comparatively. Yeah. But, you know, there's still advantages of, like, here's the big old map and, like, the ability to see all of your units and, you know, where you need to go capture or whatever. The big difference here, though, with Military Madness is a hex-based strategy game.
Nice.
There are some of those. I feel like they used to be a little bit more in vogue during this sort of era up through maybe like the mid-90s. Like there's a couple other type of games that I have that are kind of hex strategy games. There's one on like Sega CD called Dark Wizard that's okay too. But you know, it was not as in vogue as just the traditional grid, but it works here. I kind of like it, and I especially like it in the application for Military Madness because it, like Advance Wars, terrain plays a factor in your strategy and your advantages over other units and, you know, the success rate you'll have. And just like Advance Wars, you'll start with two different types of units or maybe the same types of units fighting against each other. Say you have two infantry units, so they just look like a troop, a guy, and you walk up right next to a tile or a hex tile right next to another hex tile that has an enemy guy on it, and you both start with 10 HP equivalency. And if you attack first, you know, maybe you end up with 6 or 7 and they end up with 4 or 3, or, you know, but it's also the variability that comes in there is, you know, have they, you know, gotten to a terrain spot that's maybe like up on a cliffside versus you're on a lower area, or they kind of get a little bit more detailed here where if those units have been in battles before, even if they were attacked from afar, they're gaining experience of sorts too, and their ability to survive subsequent battles increases, and they're kind of building this star rank over time too as individual units in that given like battle, which is cool. You know? Yeah,
I like that. Like you're almost like leveling up by not doing poorly, but like taking damage and like, okay, we're like getting some fortitude.
Yes, which is nice. And it's like, well, you know, that like, you know, there's long range artillery and like, stop shooting my guys. I'm trying to like capture this base over here. Like, quit it. Like it's harder for my mans to get over this mountain. Like he can only go 2 tiles, but you know, at least he's gaining experience so that if he ends up in a firefight that's closer up, you know, maybe he'll have a better chance of survival then.
Right.
So my touchstone is the Advance Wars series.
Yes.
And like, is this mission based? Is it campaign based where you're like moving the same, like if you're gaining like levels or like experience for certain units, does that carry over to extra missions, or is that like restarted every single time?
Restarted every time. It's much more traditional strategy that way, where it's just like individual missions. It's pretty like encapsulated, you know, mission by mission that way, I would say. And you have 2 win states, not unlike a lot of other strategy games, which is defeat all enemy troops or units, or capture the enemy base with your infantry unit, not with a tank or anything else, like with an actual infantry unit,
Okay.
Very, very similar this way, which is very satisfying. And it has cool sprite art style too, not unlike a lot of other Turbo Graphics games, and has kind of like a moody soundtrack, which is, fits the bill perfectly fine. You take turns, you have different kinds of units, nothing too crazy, infantry, tanks, artillery. I'm only like 6 missions in because, it can take a little bit of time, although I'll say like the computer, like artificial intelligence is pretty good and pretty fast about making its moves, which is a saving grace there. And
especially for a game from that early.
Yeah.
That's not a guarantee.
No, kind of unexpected that it did move that fast, and that's kind of what's kept me with it, besides the fact that it's portable and I can put that thing into idle mode whenever I want to otherwise. But
fire up a mission here and there. Yeah.
Really, I'm only like 6 missions in because the missions do kind of take some time. And, I've lost on missions a couple of times already, like just kind of getting my bearings and figuring out like what is an optimal strategy and figuring out the advantages of different types of units and matchups of tanks versus, artillery or whatever. Right. So figuring that out, and they've been really good about like unveiling new types of units. I even like in preparation for the podcast, I like looked a little bit at information about Military Madness, and I was like, oh no, there's like other types of units I haven't even like gotten to yet. Like, spoilers, 1989 spoilers. Yeah. And there's other games that released in the series too, including like
quite a few,
quite a few, and one that there's a revival, like a lot of these other franchises on Wii. There's like a Wii game that released too. That's just
nice.
Like I'm like, did I buy that or not? But. Factories, to release units, like if you get to your infantry guy to it first, you capture the factory and then you can release more units, and kind of like typically a middle of the playfield type of area, and then there's like a natural like meta battle that's happening over that factory, let alone your win condition. And the factories also, besides creating new units of a certain kind, can give you the ability to repair your units if you did get down to 2 HP out of 10 or whatever. So like there's a lot going on there. There's definitely a set of dedicated fans to this game and this series for good reason, and I'd say, and very happy to be playing this. It's a very good use case for that analog pocket with the turbo adapter, honestly.
Yeah. Is this one that you picked up like pretty early on in your turbo collecting days? Or,
yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was like right at the top of the radar of like, hey, this is what I need to get in the collection, or it's not one that was on. I like, again, only being kind of aware of turbo graphics after they brought the games to the Wii Virtual Console. I don't think I ever even heard of the console before that. And was like, oh, okay, all these cool games, but that was never one that like piqued my interest or caught my eye when I was flipping through those. So.
For sure. No, it did, because it was one of those ones that was like often mentioned amongst the like kind of like launch window-ish, like defining TurboGrafx console games when I was like in my deep rabbit holes of like, I need to learn everything about this now. And like I was saying before we started,
reading Racket Boy, like what are the best games on the TurboGrafx?
100%. Yeah, Racket Boy, and like I was saying before we started, like YouTube videos from 15 plus years ago, like shout out Chris Bucci and his Spyto 1A YouTube collection of he reviewed every single North American TurboGrafx 16 and Turbo CD games, because he had a whole collection when it came out. So just to have those sort of resources back in the day, before this stuff became impossibly expensive to grab, a lot of these sort of games was a saving grace as well.
Yeah, for sure. You can do a little vetting before you drop some coin on some of those games.
I straight up pulled the box out because I'm like, I'm going to look at the manual. Like, instead of ruining this for myself, let me just like pull the manual out, right? And just like, actually take a look and see what it says about different units and stuff, because that's a more authentic experience, to
exactly. Like a lot of those games were built expecting you to read the manual and like learn a thing or two, from that.
Yeah, like Advance Wars had an entire tutorial campaign on how the structure of a strategy military game worked, and like
God, they did such a good job with that too.
Yeah, but it was necessary because it is so. But like you're talking about all these like the experience mechanics, and like immediately I'm like, someone should make another game like with those in mind. Like, it took so long for like Wargroove to came out.
I was just gonna say, I still want to play Wargroove 2.
Wargroove 2,
like that roguelike mode and like a few other things that looked pretty. It looked like they basically, it doesn't look all that different, but it looks like they.
That's fine though.
But it's like that game.
People have done all these innovative like things in these genres that are like 35 years old.
I know.
If not older, yeah.
Like this is not new ground that's been tread, but like it's kind of like forgotten or
that's
like
the
underutilized.
Yeah,
exactly. Very underutilized, and yes, forgotten because this industry, it was not in vogue to make those sort of games unless maybe if you make it on PC or something and you happen to be.
That's like the only audience,
right?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
you get a couple like dad gamers out there to play them.
Yeah. Like even portably, it's just like that audience is not. You're not getting a lot of those type of games greenlit for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Happy to unearth the ones that do exist.
Also happy to learn about them for the first time.
Exactly.
2025.
I know we were saying earlier before we started recording, like when Rando was like, I'm going to talk about Military Madness. I was like, what the hell game is Rando? Like, this doesn't sound like a Randall game at all.
No. Like I said, if that was coming out today, I would never buy a game called Military Madness. Not in a million years.
Yeah.
But every TurboGrafx game, I'll probably buy it.
That's amazing.
There's some redeeming factor, even if it's just like the visuals.
Exactly. Yeah, even the box, or the case art,
the jewel case that you put up in the camera.
Yeah. That's right.
Amazing.
Jewel case. Unfortunately, the actual Who card is in the analog pocket upstairs, but that's
that just means it's getting some usage.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Heck yeah. But I don't know. Anything else we want to chat about before we wrap things up here tonight, guys?
Not a thing.
Perfect. Beautiful. Yeah, as always, you can find us on the internet at pursuingpixels.com, pretty much everywhere else on the internet as well. And otherwise, until next week, we will catch you then, and take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
For a minute during that outro, I almost felt like I was like leaving a voicemail at work. Oh, and don't forget to give us a call back anytime if you have any questions. Oh man, that was good though.
God, I want to play Advance Wars again.
I really want.
Me too.
I really want to get. I'm waiting for them to do like a. I can't believe that game hasn't gone like on a stupid discount at this point. To be honest,
especially since they did that weird delay of it.
Yeah, they pushed it back, so had like zero fanfare for the release.
Right, exactly.
Zero fanfare.
I know.
Like for the longest time, I was like not sure they were going to release it.
I thought they were going to just
for
scrap
sure.
it. Yeah,
which is weird. Yeah,
that's probably one I should actually scoop physically at some point before it just completely evaporates.
Same.
I know. I've almost done it a couple times, yeah.
But it's just a remake of the first one. It's not
first two.
So it's also Black Hole Rising. Oh hell yeah! Because I never got 2.
Yep.
I just went straight to the Dual Strike.
Although I never bothered looking at reviews to know if they actually did a good job with it or not, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've actually heard good things about Days of Ruin, even though that's when they went away from cartoony and leaned into grim.
I've got though.
Yeah, that was one of the DS ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
There were 2 on DS. Yeah.
Dual Strike was still the same, I don't know, aesthetic, and then Days of Ruin was leaning into more gritty, realistic.
Sure, as was the custom at the time.
Comparatively gritty, realistic. Because I mean, how light and fluffy can you make a military game?
Yeah.
Yeah, they pretty much already had accomplished that in the first game, really.